Hello and welcome back to another research recap. My name is Lisa. I am the owner and head coach at Nutrition Coaching and Life, where we love to help people lose body fat, increase muscle mass, improve their body composition and their relationship with food. And on Wednesdays, I love to jump on here to talk about some of the latest research. If you have listened to any of them or watched any of them, you will know that I am a huge fan of several research reviews, one of them being mass, one of them being reps, and here we have another great one of my all-time favorites, probably my favorite, and that is Body by Science by Bill Campbell. I really recommend going in and checking it out. It is $7.99 or something like that per month, and you get two studies reviewed, and really in a manner that is super easy to understand, and it's just very relevant for anybody who's interested in improving muscle mass and decreasing fat levels. So anyway, today's study was very topically titled, and topically because we do work with a lot of women going through perimenopause and menopause, and that often struggle with the symptoms, and so many debates go around, how much do your hormones actually affect if you can lose body fat, or how you're feeling and all of that. And this study gives a little bit of an insight into that. So the title of the study is called "Why Do Some Women Gain Body Fat During Midlife? Is it aging or is it menopause?" And the study that they actually reviewed was called "Changes in Body Composition and Weight During the Menopause Transition" by Greendale et al. 2019. And I will put both the link to Body by Science and the link to this particular study in the show notes, of course, so go and check them out. But yeah, I will walk you through what Bill Campbell mostly was saying, and I will read a lot of it actually directly from the research review because it is so eloquently written and also so well to understand, so there is not really a whole lot of need for me to paraphrase things or to condense things any further. So just to start off with the background information, it is an unwelcome fact that as women age, many gain unwanted body fat and weight. And what is the cause of this gain in body weight and body fat? There is a lot of disagreement, as we talked about, or as I said, in the scientific literature, with some research suggesting that any weight or fat gain in women at midlife is primarily due to simple aging, with menopausal status having little to no effect. Others think that the progressive decline of endogenous estrogen levels, as occurs during the menopause transition, is primarily responsible for the increased body fat levels and the observed increased amount of central or visceral fat, so the fat that is around the organs. Before we go into the details of this particular study, we do want to give you a definition of the terms. So a few key terms that are essential to understanding this research are chronological aging, and that is the amount of time that has elapsed from birth to a given date and is the main way of defining aging. As a woman ages from 45 to 55 years old approximately, she has aged 10 chronological years. Makes a lot of sense, I believe. Then menopause transition, what is meant by that? The period of time that includes perimenopause and the first year of the final menstrual period. Perimenopause is the time when menstrual cycles start to become irregular, and it ends after 1 year of amenorrhea, so not having any menstrual cycles. The perimenopause has two stages. The first one is the early transition, when cycles are mostly regular, and the late transition, when amenorrhea becomes more prolonged, so amenorrhea, not having a cycle. And then another term that we want to define is FMP, so your final menstrual period, the last menstrual period before menopause, when we don't have any periods anymore, the biological state when menstruation stops permanently. Menopause is confirmed after a woman has gone 12 months without a period. For example, suppose a woman's final menstrual period occurs February 2025, and then she goes 12 consecutive months without any menstrual cycle. In that case, she's confirmed to be postmenopausal in February 2026, so 1 year after FMP. So we are now trying to determine if weight gain is due to aging or the menopause transition for a woman in her 40s and 50s. And that is very difficult. In observational studies, so where the researchers only observe women over time as they age, they disaggregate the effects of chronological aging and ovarian aging. And that's consistent with the loss of estrogen production, which happens during the menopause transition, and that is very challenging because they occur contemporaneously. So it's hard to disengage the effects of what is just due to aging, what is just due to ovarian aging. As stated more simply, it's difficult to separate the weight gain that occurs as we age and the weight gain that happens when going through menopause, because it's nearly impossible to separate the two factors since they both occur as we age. You can't have a menopause transition without getting older. And as we indicated earlier, a lot of the research disregards any impact that menopause transition has on weight gain and instead lays the blame on aging alone. Here are some quotes from specific studies that have attributed midlife weight gain to chronological aging only. Study number 1, for instance, change in menopausal status was not associated with weight gain or significantly associated with increases in waist circumference. Study number 2, in summary, weight gain does not appear to be affected by the hormonal changes of the menopause. Study number 3, weight gain was not related to change in menopausal status nor to any lifestyle factors measured. Now, while many will choose a side or view this unwanted outcome as a black or white issue, there's an opinion that it is more of a middle ground perspective in which weight gain during midlife is a function of both chronological aging and the menopause transition. For example, researchers from the University of Michigan described it like this: the majority of evidence suggests that changes in weight are due to chronological aging, whereas changes in body composition and fat distribution are primarily due to ovarian aging. Does it really matter what the cause of the unwanted body fat gain is in midlife? Yes, we believe so, because also then you kind of have a little bit of peace of mind. So if weight gain is attributed to chronological aging, then not much can be done about this since we cannot stop aging. However, if unwanted weight gain, body fat accumulation, is attributed to the menopause transition, this would suggest that hormonal changes are involved and at least partly responsible for unfavorable body recomposition changes. If this is the case, we are fortunate because we have potential treatments to combat this, for example, hormone or estrogen replacement therapy. Here is the research question we want to answer. Is body fat gain during the midlife transition, so 40s to early 50s, due to aging itself, or does the menopause transition have a unique and independent influence on body fat accumulation? The article that we're reviewing is one of the best studies we have read on this topic. Unlike most studies on this topic, this study used the best methodological design to answer the question. So, who was in the study? This investigation was part of the study of women's health across the nation, commonly referred to as the SWAN study. SWAN is a longitudinal study that examines women's health during their middle years, focusing on the effects of menopause. It was launched in 1994, and SWAN is a pioneering multi-site longitudinal study into women's health and the menopause transition. We're examining physiological, biological, psychological, and social changes during a woman's life. The SWAN study was initiated in 1996 and initially enrolled 302 women at 7 geographically distinct sites across the United States, so Boston, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Oakland, LA, and Hudson County, which is in New Jersey. At the enrollment, women had these characteristics. They were between 42 and 52 years of age. They had an intact uterus and at least one ovary was producing estrogen. They were not receiving hormone therapy. They were not pregnant or lactating. They had at least one menstrual period in the last 3 months prior. This confirmed that they were not postmenopausal yet, and the definition for postmenopausal, as we talked about, is not having had a period for the previous 12 months. While over 3,000 women were initially enrolled in the SWAN study, not all of the study sites had a DEXA machine to measure body composition, and the women who lived near the sites that had DEXA machines only the women that lived near the sites that had DEXA machines were enrolled in a specific arm of the study called the SWAN Bone Density and Body Composition Cohort. In total, 1,246 subjects participated in the study with the following ethnic groups. We had about 45% Caucasian, about 29% African American, about 26 Asian. So what did the researchers do? The women in the study were not entered into an intervention, that means where one group of the subjects receives a treatment and the other doesn't, to determine body composition outcomes based on their unique treatments. This was not a randomized control intervention study. It was a longitudinal study in which the women were tracked over many years. They were not asked to do anything special other than they were required to track their menstrual cycles and get a body composition test, so a DEXA scan every year. The researchers' primary goal was to determine if the menopause transition influences body composition and body weight. What the researchers did was very savvy because they had body composition data and menstrual cycle data, and they were able to quantify the rates of change in body composition and body weight in relation to the data of the final menstrual period. This is where the design of the study was outstanding, because the only way you will know if weight gain is attributed to the menopause transition and not due to aging alone is if you know exactly when women are going through menopause and are tracking their body fat and muscle mass levels during this time. If there is no change in the rate of gain in body weight or body fat around this time, then we can assume that aging alone is responsible for any midlife weight gain. However, if we can define when the menopause transition is occurring and directly measure if the rates of body fat gain are happening during this time or phase of life, then we have evidence that the menopause transition itself is responsible for the increased weight gain. But herein lies the challenge. We don't know when a woman is going through the menopause transition because there is no blood test, age, or clinical marker that definitely characterizes this phase of life. The only definite and objective timestamp we have is when a woman has not had a menstrual cycle for the previous 12 months, and at this point in time, she's now objectively classified as postmenopausal. The two objective physiological occurrences that were key to the researchers being able to answer their research question were: when does the final menstrual period occur? Again, this is the last menstrual cycle a woman has in her life. And the number two, postmenopause classification, when 12 consecutive months have passed after the final menstrual period and no other menstrual cycles have occurred. As we indicated earlier, it's difficult, if not impossible, to know for sure, at least to the level that scientists can validate, when a woman is in the menopause transition. The information that we do have, and that is objective, is we know when she's past the menopause transition. And we know the date of her last menstrual cycle because she was tracking this. While we cannot know when a woman is going through the menopausal transition as it is occurring, what we can do is take the objective data that we have, which is the specific date of the FMP, and go back in time from that date and classify a set period of time as the menopause transition. Stated differently, we don't know with certainty when a woman is going through the menopause transition until she has gone through the menopause transition. We know that once she is postmenopausal, the time period before the FMP was indeed the menopausal transition. Makes sense. How long does the menopause transition last? This is different from woman to woman and is highly variable. While we don't know precisely when the menopausal transition starts or how long it lasts, the researchers were able to estimate this based on the changes in body composition observed in the study. We'll elaborate more on this in the results section. In this prospective study, the researchers objectively defined the subject's FMP. Since they were tracking body fat and lean mass for several years before this, they were able to determine if there were any changes in the rates of body fat gain during the menopause transition and in the postmenopausal years. This information allowed the researchers to describe the timing and onset of accelerated increases and decreases in body fat, lean mass, and body weight in relation to the FMP date. If the rate of body fat gain did not change at all during the menopause transition, if it was the same as when the subjects were younger, then we have evidence that the menopause transition has no impact on weight gain, and therefore any weight gain that happens during this time is simply due to chronological aging. However, if there is an increase in the rate of weight gain during the menopause transition, and what we mean by an increase in the rate of body fat accumulation is that there is a definitive increase in the amount of and rate of body fat that the women were experiencing that was not present in the years before their menopause transition. And this is evidence supporting that the menopause transition itself is responsible, or at least partly responsible, for body fat gain and cannot be attributed to chronological aging alone. The figure that I'm going to demonstrate soon summarizes the overall study design the researchers implemented during this multi-year study. So I will actually change that slide for you guys now. So again, we have here the primary purpose of the study was to determine if there were sudden increases in body fat gain or decreases in lean mass at the onset of menopause transition. If there was an increase in the rate of body fat gain during the menopause transition, it's evidence that these adverse body composition changes are due to menopause transition and not solely due to chronological aging itself. Now, here we have a study. Oh, hang on. We're not quite there yet, so I'm going to leave that up and just carry on for a second longer. We'll get to that in a minute. So what physique-related outcome variables were measured? The primary variable under investigation during the study was body composition changes during the menopause transition. While some people refer to it as perimenopause, it's not technically the same thing. Body composition was measured via a DEXA machine, so this is the gold standard method, better than an in-body or anything like that. The outcome variables included body weight, fat mass, and lean mass. And what were the results? So first of all, categorization. Let's head to the categorization of premenopause, menopause transition, and postmenopause. The average age of the FMP final menstrual period was 52 years. Knowing the final menstrual period was crucial to this study. This is an objective point in time that designates when someone is now postmenopausal. It's important to note that while the average age for the final menstrual period was 52 years old in the study, this was the average age for this occurrence. This means that some women had their FMP before the age of 52 and others had their FMP after the age of 52. We cannot assume that all women will have their FMP at 52 and be classified as postmenopausal at 53 years old. So this is where we have this next study coming in here. Graphic coming in. So premenopause is before, on average 8 to 2 years. And then we have the menopause transition, final menstrual period. And then we have postmenopause. Based on the changes in the body composition variables, the researchers defined the 3 stages of menopause according to the following. Again, premenopause, 8 to 2 years prior to menopause transition, menopause transition 2 years before and 1.5 years after FMP, and then postmenopause, 1.5 to 10.5 years after FMP. While the researchers defined these time periods for each of the various phases of menopause in the section below, we will be presenting the data for the 5 years before and the 5 years after the final menstrual period. Body composition changes during this time. So let's start with the body composition data observed before the women entered the menopause transition. It's important to note that all body composition variables we report on are presented relative to the subject's baseline values. When you look at changes in body composition from this perspective, you can precisely determine if and when there is an accelerated rate of weight gain or fat gain and any acceleration in the loss of muscle mass. This is precisely the data we need to determine if weight gain is attributed to chronological aging alone or if it is impacted by the menopause transition as well. So next slide here. Is that the right slide? I might have missed something up there, sorry. This is actually the slide that I wanted. So as we look at these graphs, we are focusing on the slopes of the lines. If the lines go up, so from left to right, that means there is an increase in the body composition variable. If the lines go down from left to right, there's a decrease in body composition variable. Just by focusing on the pre-menopause data, we see that women gain body weight. Why are they gaining body weight? Mainly because they are gaining body fat during this time. This data is not surprising because we know that we gain weight and body fat as we age. Of course, we can mitigate this with fitness, lifestyle, and you know, of course, reading various research. But look at what's happening to the lean mass. It's also increasing during these years. Only slightly, but still. We didn't expect that, or I didn't expect that when looking at this. So that means in the years prior to the menopause transition, the weight gain, there is weight gain, yes, and this is that these women are gaining both body fat and a little bit of lean mass during this time. So actually not terrible news yet. Now let's look at the body composition changes during the menopause transition. Things get interesting when we move our attention to the menopause transition. Let me move on here. Focusing on the body weight data. Notice that the line for body weight does not change. The rate of body weight gain does not increase at all during the menopause transition. Yes, the women are still gaining weight, just as they did in the years prior to their menopause transition, but the rate of weight gain isn't changing, so the rate isn't changing. They are gaining the same amount each year, even though they are in their menopause transition. A lot of people will assume that this means that menopause does not cause any changes in the rate of weight gain for women. This is evidence that aging itself is what causes additional weight gain and has nothing to do with the hormonal changes being that occur during the menopause transition. However, that is not a good interpretation of this data. We do need to look at the body weight data and pay attention to the composition, so fat and muscle mass of the body weight, to come to the correct conclusion. Many people will claim that menopause is not responsible for weight gain, which is technically true, but what effect does menopause have on body weight and muscle mass? That is the question we need to be asking. The reason that the rate of body weight gain is staying the same and not significantly changing is because the women are gaining body fat and losing lean mass. Let's look at this. When you aggregate the loss of one tissue, lean mass, and the gain of other tissue, body fat, you have a net gain of approximately 0. As fitness professionals, we know and are trained to look past the scale, so past just body weight, and pay attention to the composition of the body, what is happening to lean mass and body fat. As you can see, the menopause transition is causing body recomposition, but in a negative direction. At the onset of the menopause transition, the women begin to have an accelerated rate of fat gain and, for the first time, start to lose lean muscle. This loss of muscle and gain of fat does not just have physique implications. There are serious consequences to one's health as well. So, for example, increased risk of cardiovascular disease and osteoporosis. The authors of the study also picked up on this and made the statement in their manuscript. Jointly examining the rates of changes in fat and lean mass during during premenopause and the menopause transition sheds light on why there is no measurable change in the body weight trajectory accompanying the menopause transition. So again, let's look at a proper interpretation of this data. And basically, when someone states that menopause does not cause weight gain, they are technically correct. The response here would be, though, while this may be true concerning body weight, the most important variable to focus on is body composition. When we look at the longitudinal data on the effects of the menopause transition, we see that the menopause transition is responsible for an accelerated rate of fat gain and a loss of lean mass. Now, moving on to the body composition data during postmenopause. The body composition changes that take place during the menopause transition are not favorable. Women lose muscle and gain fat, but what about the postmenopausal years? Do the negative body composition trends continue? In postmenopausal years, we see a reduction in the favorable body composition changes occurring during the menopause transition. Specifically, lean mass does not continue to be lost, body fat does not continue to be gained, and subsequently body weight stabilizes. So sorry, this is what we can actually see in this figure now. I changed a little bit too early. Summarizing their data, the researchers stated, our findings link the menopause transition with unfavorable alterations in body composition, which abruptly worsen at the onset of the menopause transition and then abate in postmenopause. Stated differently, there was an accelerated increase in body fat mass and an accelerated decrease in lean mass that started about 2 years before FMP. At 1.5 years after FMP, decelerations were evident in both fat and lean compartments. The data implies that we need to focus on preventing the unfavorable body composition changes that begin during the menopause transition. Fortunately, we are well prepared to handle this with our clients. It's important to know that this data was collected in women who are not resistance training, eating a high protein diet, or on hormone therapy. As fitness professionals, we're well equipped to help our middle-aged female clients with resistance training and diet. We can refer our clients to an evidence-based medical professional to discuss if hormone therapy is right for them. So let's make that quantitative insights, or let's quantify those insights. Up to this point, we have only looked at the trajectories of body composition variables. In terms of body fat percentage, there was an increase over the 3.5 years of menopausal transition. During this time, the rate of increase in body fat percentage nearly doubled from 1% to 1.7% per year, leading to an overall increase of 6% in body fat over the 3.5 long menopausal transition. We need to know that body fat percentage is impacted by body fat and lean mass. If lean mass goes down and body fat levels remain stable, body fat percentage will increase. The reason why the body fat percentage changes were so robust in the study was because there was a concomitant increase in body fat and a loss of lean mass. While these are the average values, it's important to point out that the white and black subjects were the only ones to gain body fat and lose lean mass. The Asian women did not experience gains in fat mass or lose lean mass during the menopause transition. We highlight this point to say that the adverse body composition values specified above were higher for Caucasian and African American women. So does changing hormone levels during the menopause transition play a role in unfavorable body composition changes? The authors of the study believe that they did. They stated that mounting evidence points to both estradiol and follicle-stimulating hormone as regulators of energy balance. The time course of the trajectories of body composition changes, so increased body fat and decreased lean mass, mirror estradiol and FSH trajectories in relation to the final menstrual period. There's an accelerated drop in estradiol and a similar rapid increase in FSH, bracketing the final menstrual period, beginning about 2 years prior to and ceasing about 2 years after the final menstrual period. The researchers added that estradiol affects numerous energy homeostasis pathways. For example, it includes central nervous system control of food intake and energy expenditure, and adipose tissue storage and metabolism regulation and insulin sensitivity. So in relation to muscle mass, the authors stated that declines in estrogen could be responsible for the detrimental effects of menopausal transition on muscle. The neuromuscular system has a lot of alpha and beta estrogen receptors, and when taken in early postmenopause, hormone therapy may preserve the muscle transcriptome and benefit muscle strength. The authors added that this by saying that progesterone can increase muscle protein synthesis in women, and therefore persistently low progesterone levels, which start during the menopause transition, that could contribute to a decline in lean mass. To add to this, earlier this year in Body by Science, there was a study summarized that reported that estradiol therapy caused significantly greater increases in lean mass compared to a placebo in early postmenopausal females. So something to think about. If someone was to ask Bill Campbell, the author of this, if he thought that menopause, specifically the menopause transition, has anything to do with adverse changes in body composition, or if this were just a normal function of aging, his response would be to point to this study and respond with an empathic, it's the menopause transition. So now let's look at some strengths and limitations of this study. Strength, for example, was the number of subjects and overall the study design. There were over 1,200 subjects in the study, and this was a large sample size that the researchers were able to follow for many years while tracking their menopause status and body composition every year. Unless you did what the researchers did in this study, so tracking the women before they reached the menopause transition and then continuing to monitor them through the menopause transition and then following them for several years in postmenopause, there would be no way to attribute changes in body fat and muscle mass to anything but chronological age. The researchers should be applauded for their study design and the wealth of data that they were able to share and contribute to the scientific literature on this topic. Another strength was the consistency of the DEXA scans. The body composition device the researchers used was great for this study. The study team was very strict on their choice of body composition assessments. They even excluded 2 of the 7 SWAN study sites because 2 sites did not have the same DEXA model. A few of the sites purchased a hologic DEXA model during the study, and to make sure the data was valid between the 2 machines, they scanned the subjects on both the old and the new machines for cross-calibration. These decisions demonstrated the researchers' attention to detail during the study. Study limitations. So no resistance training cohort was present. That was overall it was a great study, but they could have really included one arm that was also resistance training just to see if that would offset any of the lean body mass lost or even the gain of the body fat. And there was also no cohort that was on hormone replacement therapy. So that's just some thoughts and ideas for future studies, I guess. We looked at that. So now I guess to sum it up or to finalize, he's also asking, what are some primary nutrition coaching or exercise programming strategies for midlife women going through the menopause transition? And I mean, like, for example, we at Nutrition Coaching and Life really try to focus on a lot of the lifestyle things being in place when a woman enters this transition already. So that's going to be super, super helpful, because then it's not such a hard change as in like, okay, now we need to start eating enough fiber. Now we need to start resistance training, but it's all already in place. So again, like he was saying, resistance training, doing some cardiovascular work, just in general being aware of calorie intake, so that when you go through menopause or the menopause transition, you're already aware of like how much you're actually eating, what is in what food, what are some good protein sources, what is calorically dense. A big one that I actually also like to emphasize or like to highlight is just limiting or minimizing alcohol as best as possible, simply because it does put a huge strain on our liver, and the liver helps with our detoxification process, which also clears out hormones that are not needed or that are in excess and so on. So it's really going to help us have the best possible hormone balance during that time, during a time where the body's already stressed. So liver health, good hydration, sleeping well, managing your stress well, those are really, really important and should be the foundation of everything. And then we can layer some natural supplements on top of that, so things that help your body deal with stress better, like ashwagandha, things that help your body produce hormones better, like vitamin D, and of course, kind of going on top of that, and just depending on what the individual needs. And if we do have regular blood work, that is super, super helpful, because as we said, then we can actually refer them to someone, to a medical professional, to discuss if hormone replacement therapy, or even just quote unquote just things like a progesterone cream or whatever, could be helpful at whatever period of time. I do think that this study was really great, just even if it is more or less negative news, but it's great in the sense of, okay, it's not just in your mind. It is specifically hard during that time for your body to maintain the same body composition or to even drop body fat. However, it's not impossible, especially if you are working and focusing on all of these lifestyle strategies and keeping a close eye on your calorie consumption and your energy expenditure and just training stimulus. So definitely we want to be resistance training, we want to be managing our stress, we want to be consuming enough fiber and protein, and hydrating our body well. That would be some of the foundations I would give you there. But yeah, I really recommend reading the entire study. I also really recommend purchasing Body by Science. Again, Bill Campbell, I love his work, absolutely. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions about this, about our coaching, so that the women that we do take through premenopause, perimenopause, the menopause transition, or that are postmenopausal, that they still thrive throughout that time. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. This was a little bit longer than usual, but hopefully you enjoyed it anyway, and I will talk to you in the next one.